we've gotten the podcast to a cool point. We want to keep growing it in a helpful and useful way. Please communicate that sort of stuff to us so that we can be helpful and useful, and in a way that's not growing into every other podcast that's out there. That's the number one thing we're trying to avoid. We don't listen to them, and neither do you, because they suck and they're boring. And how do we tread this fine line of not going overly professional so that it's just super lame, and not going full bro guru garbage?
Dude, it's been forever since we've recorded. It's been like 4 or 5 weeks.
That's right? Really?
It's been at least, I think it's been 4, because all 3 episodes we recorded when you came here for my birthday are now live as of today. So we haven't recorded anything after that. So this is the first time that we're recording and it's remote. Also, for whenever we do get this live in the future, I had to switch to my really cheap webcam. So there's like this really weird kind of purple hue to everything. And
I thought you were just going for like an Instagram filter or something.
Yeah, no,
it's kind of cool.
I like appreciate you saying 70s. That, because my $130 Elgato face cam is a piece of trash. And it like, that's like what I've been recording the last like 20 videos on, I think. But it's like, the quality is super great, but it just constantly freezes randomly, and you can't have that happen when you're recording an hour-long podcast, and it could just happen at any time. Yeah. And what solves it is unplugging it or restarting the computer. But like, there's a chance that it'll happen again. So I read a bunch of stuff where it's like you can update your BIOS, you can check your USB-C ports, you can switch out the cable, and like I'll try all of that, but like I've done most of that and it doesn't do anything. And for what it's worth, I built my computer in 2021 with an RTX 3070, and it's got a Asus motherboard on it that's pretty decent, and it's just like it's just, and yes, it is in a USB 3 slot. So I don't know. Frustrating. So now we're using this cheap. What I need to do is just get like a secondary camera up there. I want to get like a Canon. I have a Panasonic Lumix G85, but it's a great camera on its own. But the problem with that is if you plan to like use it as a webcam, it's terrible. You have to, there isn't like a good solution for using it as a webcam, except if you use like the Cam Link, the Elgato Cam Link, which that also causes things to freeze. So it kind of seems like the common denominator here is Elgato. They need to get their shit together. But I can use my G85 just as like a camera to record all of this and then just kind of mash it up. But like, frankly, I barely have the time to cut these podcast episodes, let alone do the video work, which is why we don't have video work up. So maybe when we get a video person and we start having the money that we want to start throwing at this podcast, then we'll do that.
Yeah. It's kind of the thing that needs to justify itself is we need the finances to say that this is worth doing more into. I guess we have had sponsorship inquiries at this point too, but not anybody that we feel comfortable doing.
Yeah. I think, yeah, well, we had someone that wanted to sponsor us they sold like white label services to agencies where like you would, start your own agency, but then like they would execute the services for you. And we're kind of against that. Doing it for our agencies, and then I'm adamantly opposed to it because logistically it seems stupid. It just seems like you don't know how to do your job, and so now you're outsourcing it. I've got all kinds of feelings on that we can cover in a different episode, but it'd be
different if like Hover or I don't know. I'm trying to think. I like Hover, so that's like my go-to. Who else do we use? Google Workspace. Like they're going to reach out. Like that's not going to happen. But if they did, I'd be like, yeah, we can talk. We can at least entertain this. But,
or like non-industry sponsors. Like I use Early Bird, which is that like morning cocktail you can get in the US. I use it every morning, like religiously now. I can't wake up without it. And like if they were like, yeah, we'd like to sponsor the podcast, I'd be like, cool, yeah, because I actually use that. But for now, like, I mean, they're getting free sponsorship from me right now, so why would they do that? But okay, I voiced my frustrations about Elgato. I was going to ask you about Japan.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is it's been so long now that I'm in Japan. So that's cool. And I was going to say the number one thing that nobody really drives home enough, and it will depend on where you go, but this would have been really useful and helpful to know. And it's, you should really bring slip-on shoes. Like they say it, but they don't drive it home enough how convenient it would be, because you're constant, and it depends where you are, but there are enough. It's like the second time you do it, you realize, oh no, like I've made a mistake.
So Lauren's been doing a lot of research on this. And I told her that you mentioned that, and she goes, yeah, I know. I read about it. I'm like, oh, so like we're on like Shein looking at nice slip-on shoes. She was also looking at other things too that I kind of wanted your input on too, which was for the listener, we're going to Japan at the end of next month to meet up with Cody for a few days, and then kind of just bop around and do our own things. And we're going to record and we're going to record an episode in Japan. So like our Columbia episode, only with better quality. But she was also saying that, like, okay, so she has to dress apparently very conservatively, like long dress, no cleavage, that kind of stuff. And then apparently it's, in some places it's considered kind of rude if I wear dark pants. Is that a thing?
Yeah, maybe. That's not, it's not a major concern I would have. I would be more concerned about like wearing shorts in a professional environment or something.
Yeah, well,
not much less about the color of your
pants. I guess the way that she said it was like, it's improper to wear shorts in certain aspects, and then also to avoid dark colors. So
well, if that's the case, I'm just constantly rude because I'm just straight up wearing black. I'm like a ninja all the time. It's just all black all the time.
So I shouldn't worry about the dark pants too much, but
no, not at all. Shorts, that's a fair thing to say. It is true. People dress conservatively here in general. Like the women wear long flowy clothing that isn't revealing at all. And then the men, I mean, it's kind of funny because when you're in Tokyo, and, we pass through Yokohama, you see it. Everybody's wearing suits, right? And you're like, yeah, I heard about this. This isn't really surprising. And then you get to like Kofu, and then you still see people wearing suits. it's like being in Des Moines.
Just heading to Walmart wearing my suit.
Yeah. It's like being in Des Moines and you're like, whoa, what? Come on, guys. We're like 5 miles from corn, right? Like, what are we doing? But
I don't see people even in Minneapolis wearing suits down the street.
Yeah, but no, they do. The men do dress. I mean, I don't know if conservative. It's like just professional, and jeans are pretty much reserved for the weekend, right? And there's parts of the US that are like that too, right? Like if you work for a bank or something like that, it's obviously would be a similar sort of setup. But the shoes thing is big.
Oh, I always find it weird when people wear suits at the airport. Like, I can't, like, there's just so many people wearing suits at the airport. And like, I get that, like, you get off a plane and the first thing you do is go to a conference. But there's people wearing suits at the airport at like 6 p.m. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like,
so yeah, here's the thing. And I didn't put two and two together until afterwards, and Jenny said something. So it's uncommon to be white here, right? Like you get, especially in Kofu, you get looks. People look at you. We've had our picture taken twice now. It's really fun.
That's so cool.
But when we landed in the airport, we were at the Haneda terminal, one of them. And I just saw just a large pack of white dudes, right? Like just white business bros in varying ages from like 35 to 65.
Did you go take their picture?
I did not, but I didn't know what to do. I was really surprised. I'm like, you guys don't look like athletes. I don't know what's going on here. Like, I don't know why there's such a high, like dense concentration. And then I didn't understand what language they were speaking too. But so Jenny had run to the bathroom. She was on her way back and she said, "Did you see that?" And then I said, "Yeah, like I saw it, but I don't know what I was seeing." She said, "They were all French. Like all of those guys were French."
Oh.
I said, "Oh, okay."
She said, "They look like pussies."
We just lost some listeners.
Yeah, no. Hey, if you can't make fun of yourself.
But no, so what I realized though is I thought about it and like, I don't know, like they're probably here for business, right? I don't know what they would be doing, but it's probably business. And then I put two and two together and realized, oh, we're here during G7. So there's a lot of people flying in.
Is G7 out? It's not always in Japan. Right? They move it around.
No. This time it was in Hiroshima, I believe. We should fact check. I'm like, somebody fact check me live.
Wait, how far is Hiroshima from Kofu?
From Kofu?
So they fly into Tokyo and then like...
Yeah. I think that's what it was they're either coming into, what is it, Haneda or Narita. And then from there, they'll, take a smaller plane to Hiroshima or something like that. But people aren't really taking direct flights there. Not, unless you're really important, like, what is it, Zelensky or something. Dude, I hope he got...
The last time we took a direct flight to Hiroshima, it was like 70 years ago.
7. I don't get it.
Oh, it's World War II.
Oh, I thought you said 7.
No, 70. No, I
get it.
80 maybe. It was a dark joke.
It was dark.
We lost our Japan listeners.
So far we've lost the French, we've lost the Japanese. Let's keep it up. In the English, you talk funny too. Yeah. Strange accents. We don't like your teeth.
That's our second biggest market, the UK and Ireland. Yeah. So how overall, how are you liking Japan? How's Jenny liking it?
So those are two questions, right? Me, I love it. Even more than I thought it would somehow. It feels, I don't know. I've never felt more at home in a place. Even though you're white, right? And you're like, of course I don't fit in here. I'm not Japanese, but just so much of this, because I spent some of my formative years here, a lot of it just clicks and it feels natural. Jenny's liking it even more than she thought. And the only thing is she's just struggling with the language, which is understandable because it's brutally hard. But everybody's super nice, super accommodating. We're super fortunate and super lucky that we got where we did. So I think I mentioned it before, just repeat again. We reached out to the Sister City program in Des Moines that connected us with Kofu City, which is like the capital of Yamanashi Prefecture. So that makes sense that they would be partner cities. And then through that, I was able to get connected with a co-working space here, and it's the only one that's 24 hours. And the owner of the co-working space, his name is Mr. Kanai, and he's just top notch. Like everybody that he's introduced us to, like it sounds very Japanese to be like, there's no way I can possibly repay this man in my entire life, right? For everything that he has already done within just like a week of being here. But it's true. Like just a good guy. I hope he gets all the best things in the world. And I am like the Martians in Toy Story, eternally grateful. So
you're telling me that though, that Jenny was like, yeah, I really like it here. I'm going to be sad when we leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure we will be too. I mean, we have like 10 days budgeted, but we lose one going there. Mm-hmm. Because it's a 13-hour flight from us. So we'll leave on the 28th and get there on the 29th. Like midday the 29th. So we basically have 8 hours to force ourselves to stay up to beat the jet lag.
gonna say you get a day to recover, then we rally for 3 days, and then you guys continue to rally. And
I don't think if we can stay up for 8 hours, which if we do, I've done the math, we'll be up for 24 hours, which isn't like a hard feat. It's annoying and uncomfortable, but if we do that, we should be able to fall asleep at 10 p.m. Japan time and wake up at a decent time the next day, and then we'll be right on track. Now, the hard part is coming back, because when we come back, we'll leave at 4:20 p.m. Nice. And on July 8th, and then we land in Minnesota at 2:20 p.m. on July 8th. So it's like nothing happens. But the problem with that is, let's say we get to the airport in Tokyo at 1 p.m. because we've got to go through customs and everything like that. Even if we wake up at like 11, from 11 until our plane takes off at 4, that is 5.5 hours of being awake. And then we have 13 hours or an 11.5 hour flight, which is going to put us about 17 hours until we get home. And then we have to stay up for another 8 hours. I guess it's about the same, really. It's not that terrible.
This reminds me of something, but I want to let you finish first, because
I'm about done. No, I guess it's about the same. If we just stay up 24 hours, we can beat the jet lag.
Yeah, do your best
in one day. Yeah. Well, she'll take off that extra time if she needs to. I think she'll take like 2 or 3 days to take it off. But like, I work from home, so if I have severe jet lag, I'll take naps between meetings.
Right. What I was going to say is, so we've had 2 people from the Kofu City government really help facilitate a lot of this. One woman's name is Fanny. She's actually French, so she's fluent in French, English, and Spanish, and in Japanese. Brilliant. Her intelligence is insulting.
She can speak 4 languages?
No, sorry, 3. French,
English, and
Spanish? Japanese. Not Spanish.
Oh, not Spanish. Yeah, okay.
I messed it up. And then Mr. Oda, who's just like one of the coolest, suavest Japanese guys I've seen. I don't know. He's just... And I like that his name's Oda, like the One Piece.
Don't watch One Piece.
All nerd stuff. Anyway, I'll stop there. But anyway, so they're going to be coming to Des Moines during the Iowa State Fair, because the mayor of Kofu City is going to be visiting for the Sister City program. So Fanny had been messaging me just some of the details about the flights and stuff. And I said, honestly, it's not great. And there's no great way to do it. If you go from a landlocked state to another landlocked state in another country, there is no smooth way that's going to happen, right? All of the major airports are not going to be where you are. So you're going to have connections of some sort. And it's going to be uncomfortable at some point.
Yeah. Well, except for like Minneapolis.
True.
That's like the one landlocked good international airport to come into in the US. Because we have a direct flight from Minneapolis to Tokyo.
Yep. No, that's sweet.
But
either way, you're going from, even if you go to Tokyo, you still have to go Tokyo to Kofu. So the same thing too. If you land in Minneapolis, you have to go Minneapolis to Iowa.
It's just Iowa, honestly, man. If you're in Iowa or Wyoming, like, it sucks.
as our businesses in Iowa.
We aren't. Well, you are, like, permanently, but temporarily you're not.
Anyway,
no,
real stuff.
Yeah, let's jump to the podcast, guys. So, we missed this on our last recording because we kind of got on a high and just recorded like 3 episodes right in a row and didn't realize that the 3rd episode we recorded when you were here in person was our 52nd episode. And I don't know how many of you out there know this, but there are only 52 weeks in a year, and this is a weekly podcast, which means we have officially been doing this podcast for 1 year. We've had 52 episodes. And so,
we're not one of those podcasts that just dropped off, or you were an early adopter and you're like, oh, I really like this. And then you get to 27 and then they just die. You're like, what happened?
I have that with like really cringy, terrible podcasts. Like I love to listen to those like wannabe coaches, like life coaches that are just awful. And I like they get to like first like they release episodes so like sporadically, and it'll be like one episode and then like 6 months later another episode and then a week later another one, and they usually do like 10 or 11 and then they just drop off the face of the earth. And it's so disappointing for me because that's my podcast entertainment. I don't like to listen to good podcasts. I like to listen to terrible podcasts, and which is why I listen to ours quite a bit. We've been doing this steadily for a year, and I've never missed a single day. Every Friday since episode number 1, a new episode has come out. There was only one time where I missed the midnight deadline because I forgot to hit publish or forgot to hit schedule. So, but I did publish it at like noon, I think. So it was within 12 hours. Yeah. So I thought it would be a good episode. It's kind of a throwaway episode. If I'm going to be really honest, there isn't a ton of value in this episode. If you just like listening to us talk and listening to our story and just kind of, hearing how far we've come as an agency and just, bros, then this will be a good episode just to kind of turn on while you're driving or mowing the lawn or doing whatever. But I wanted to kind of talk about a lot of things that have changed this last year, not just with the podcast and the agency, but, with our personal lives as well. And I've always been a huge proponent of saying a lot can happen in a year. And I know it's almost kind of cliche, but I don't think people really understand the magnitude of what can actually happen in just 1 year. And I think it'd be really cool. So like, I'll start with just kind of how the podcast has evolved over a year of doing this. So when we first started, I basically told Cody like, hey, download OBS. And then here's how to set it up. And that was like a 2-week process because you couldn't figure it out. And then it was hard for me to do it like remotely. And like you were like sharing your screen. I'm like, all right, go and do this setting and all that. And then you had the cheapest mic that you've been called out for in like the first 18 episodes or something. I finally got you to upgrade to the Shure microphone that I'm using now. But I've had this since day one. I dropped like $500 on podcast equipment.
So this is the equivalent. Like the podcast is to Jake is Japan to me. Like Jake front loaded a lot of the money to get the podcast off the ground. And I remember when some of the initial questions and stuff when I got here too, people were like, do you need like receipts and this sort of stuff? And I just had to straight up tell some people like, this is a personal goal. This isn't a business thing yet. I mean, I do have business ambitions, but similarly, sometimes we just front load money that are like personal goals and personal dreams. And this has been one for Jake's. So when I did get that mic upgrade too, I didn't pay for it. The company did.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And there was, okay. That was an end of year, or it was we were distributing, payments out to us because we were like, we need to get rid of some of the savings or else we're going to get taxed on it. But that was, like the first few months, I think from like May to, like late July or August. And then, I think it was a very slow kind of gradual increase on our listeners. And, it wasn't until I think our podcast really took off when we had the Skylar episode, because he has got a relatively big audience and he shared it to it. And then we just like skyrocketed. And I don't know for sure if those listeners just stuck around. I know we got a lot of subscribers from that, like within like the day of it announcing or like the day before it came out. I think we got like 30 subscribers from our website, which is like a fourth of everything that we have now. So, but it also sounds small too when we say we've only got like 120 subscribers from the website. That's just from the website. We have about 1,000 overall between Amazon Music, between Apple and Spotify, and what are the other ones? Google Podcasts. But when we do share this, I am going to throw up I'm not going to throw up.
He's going to throw up.
Yeah, no, I'm going to show our growth on, we'll do daily here. So let me share my screen. I wonder if I can put it in OBS. I don't really want to. We're just going to do it in Google Meet here. So that we could just talk about it.
Did you prepare? Okay.
Yeah,
I was like, you didn't prepare anything.
No,
absolutely
not. No, I don't
not
prepare
like a
anything.
Pivot table or something. I was about to get crazy. Like, whoa, who knew?
But you'll actually see our explosive growth right around like January when we were in Colombia. And it has nothing to do with the Colombia episode. I think this was just kind of what we were 30 some episodes into the game. Mm-hmm. And then I think it's pretty obvious on this graph when the Skylar episode aired. So that was March 16th. It was actually March 17th when it aired. But after that, we had a huge drop off, but it looks like we retained a lot of people. And I think a lot of this kind of came from, like, I'm in a lot of agency owner groups and social media marketing agency groups on Facebook. And anytime there's a question that we have answered on the podcast or that we want to cover on the podcast, I usually direct people to it and say, hey, this information's for free. It's right here. And that alone has driven a lot of traffic to it. But I also think that just the level, the type of podcast we have and the quality of it, I think that's more than enough reason for people to stick around. And I'll be even happier if people actually stick around on this episode just to hear some of this stuff, because it just means that people enjoy listening to us, even if it's
these
not
are the people that we need to ask for a review if you haven't left a review yet. Because if you're still sticking around, if you're listening right now and you haven't left a review, like, what do we got to do, guys? For real.
Yeah. I mean, we already told you that you're not going to get a lot of like agency value out of this.
We were already like, this one's worthless. You're just listening to us just ramble. So if you're around and you haven't left one, please do it.
Yeah, it's a throwaway episode. But I wanted to show you this graph here. So this graph here is monthly since we started. Obviously, there's like a huge drop off at the very end. That's because we're in the middle of this month and it's building. So like this is where it ended May 18th for the last actual full month period. But you'll see it's just constant gains. We haven't had a single month that dipped. And to put it in perspective, so just for some numbers wise, between June 2022 and November 2022, we had like the same listener growth. We had 184 listeners in June of 2022, and then in November we had 214 listeners. So like it barely grew the entire time frame. After that, December we had 408 listeners. We had 749 in January, 1,332 in February, 1,390 in March of this year. And in this last one, April to May, we closed out at 1,560 listeners. So the trajectory is definitely there. And just to give you some perspective on, you aren't the only one listening to this. There are other people who enjoy this content, just like you. And honestly, that kind of blows my mind. Cody and I had no idea if people would want to listen. So, but just beyond listening too, like the people who actually engage on the website, because if you go to our website, you can comment on the individual episodes. And Cody and I will usually respond. Not usually, we will always respond to them at this point.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you want to get a hold of me, there's something about it that I like. If it comes through, I feel an obligation, like compared to other things where I can just be like, it's fine. I don't have to do anything about that. But if I see a comment, depending on what it is, I usually feel some sort of obligation to give detail. Now, if you do like rapid fire 10 questions in a row or something, then I'm going to give you rapid fire answers back without extreme depth. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Be careful about what you're asking.
You'll usually get like a response from both of us. Like Cody will probably do the rapid fire one, and I'll probably add on to that, and then also vice versa. So I really enjoy people commenting on the website. It allows us to engage with people and lets us know that people are listening and they do care. And
that you're trying. I mean, that's a big thing too, is a lot of the comments have been people's experiences as they're growing too. And knowing that you're doing that and not just consuming content, that's big for me. I don't want to know that all you're doing is listening. I want to know that you're listening and doing stuff and that you're going out there and building towards your dream. I don't want to hear that you're just a passive consumer and that you have fun listening, but you aren't doing anything about it. I mean, if you are, I say that in assuming that you want to grow something yourself. If you don't, and you just like listening to those talks, thank you. That's cool too. I do appreciate it. But it's much more, not more. It's very rewarding to see people grow.
I've heard a lot of the people who do comment on the website are like they kind of give us their story, and then I see them comment on later episodes, like weeks later or months later. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool. Like Taylor he posts on the episodes quite a bit, and it's been cool to see his story kind of grow and unfold as he listens to the podcast. He probably listened to the first 13 episodes and hadn't started anything, and then he finally got the motivation to do it, and now he's got a website. He's already like looking for clients, and might have already landed one, I'm not sure, but he was saying, like, I don't know if it was like for a year or years that he was just kind of like didn't know where to start and kind of procrastinated, and then it was this podcast that kind of got him off the ground and just doing things. And I like to follow those stories too, because I don't want to just have this podcast and then just no one takes the advice and no one takes the steps, or it doesn't motivate anybody, because then that's just kind of useless for us. But
yeah, there's a hard balance between making this seem cool and fun, which it undoubtedly is. It is very cool and fun, but everybody out there is pimping this out to the max. That's what they do. So making this, like bringing this back down to ground level and making it very unsexy and very boring while still making it intriguing enough to listen. That's what I always wanted. I wanted people to talk about it in very plain and simple terms, not, yo, here in my garage, here's my Lambo. I'm at the park at 4 p.m. on a Thursday because I can, like
I keep hearing I keep getting ads on Facebook that it's like, here's how to monetize your podcast, or did you start a podcast but are struggling to figure out how to make money from it? I'm like, no, I don't care. I never started this podcast and thought like, oh, it's going to make us money. Like, no, absolutely not what this is for. And I do get asked quite a bit. Alex or AJ, who's commented on a few episodes on the website, he even asked me like what our end game is with this. And I'm like, honestly, dude, we don't really have one.
2.5 in Vanguard, man. 2.5 in Vanguard. Then we're good. We check out, we call it good. I'll always joke that's, I'm half joking when I say that's my goal, because once I hit 2.5 million in Vanguard, I'm definitely slowing down. But
yeah, but to the point of like the podcast, there is some point of monetization, I'm sure, in the future, but it's not going to be anything to where our listeners don't want it. So like, we're not going to produce a course that nobody wants or try to push anything on that. We're also not going to advertise sponsors that nobody wants, especially that we don't want. And same thing with referrals. Like, we're not going to push anything that we don't personally use ourselves. So if you are a sponsor listening to this and you want us to be a referral, first of all, if you're a sponsor listening to this episode, kudos.
Let's hang out. You're probably cool.
Yeah.
Let me know if you're in Japan.
Yeah, we're going to need to use your product or service before, and we're probably not going to. So if we're already using it or in our personal lives, then great, let's talk. But otherwise, it might be a waste of your time to reach out to us, because we're just not that into trying to monetize this podcast to the max. We wanted this to be something special. So I think it's hard to find people who are like, yo, I just did this because I wanted to, and I wanted to give back to the community. Like, I have nothing to give back to any of our listeners right now. Like, I never did. It was more of like, I just wanted to educate. Like, I just wanted to teach people. And there's something
about that to entrepreneurship, I think, too, because I think once we hit 10K MRGP, that felt like the first grown up step.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember other people started thinking of me a little bit differently other than I thought of myself. Cause when you're at 10K MRGP with 3 people, you're not living the dream.
Yeah.
Right? But then as time goes on too, and you keep growing to the next levels, but you don't really feel like it's happening, or you don't really recognize it at the time. Then you see later on that, oh, I am now one of those guys that I looked up to back then, and I didn't see the transition. Yeah, no, it's super weird.
Yeah,
it's super weird because it doesn't feel like anything was really different.
Also, 10K MRGP, like, I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as kind of like conceited or anything, but like, it's not that much. Like, especially like once you get here and once you surpass it, like we're double, almost triple that now, and it 10K just feels like if we drop back down to 10K, even with the same amount of staff that we have, it would just feel like we're so poor. And a lot of that isn't coming into our pockets. Like, we're creating a kind of the business economy to where it's, we have this savings account, profit account, marketing account, capital expense account. I'm sure there's another one, payroll account. There's the economy of that, to where like you don't actually get a lot of that. And
well, if you're smart, you don't.
I guess
you're being responsible with your money and not just shoveling it all into your pocket.
Yeah. So last month was the first month ever that Evergrow, my income from Evergrow exceeded my gross income, exceeded my gross income of my day job, which is over 6 figures. So that was a big milestone for me with Evergrow. And then also this month will beat that. So just based on the numbers that are coming in. So to see that to come in like regularly, like that's pretty cool, because it's not just my income that's exceeding 6 figures. It's also yours, because we're 50-50. I know exactly how much you make.
Yeah, but I like when other people don't. I like when people have no idea. I want people to always be very confused. Like, I want people to see your very awesome life, and then me and my, 2009 Honda Fit, and people just be like, well, none of this makes sense. What's happening here?
Cut that.
People will always know, because I always say Vanguard. They'll be like, he's putting it in Vanguard.
Yeah,
that's what's going on.
But you don't live that lifestyle, right? Like you get your paycheck, and like 90% of it goes into Vanguard, and then like the rest of it, you're like, I'm going to live like a poor man.
Yeah,
which is how some people should live their life. That's not my style, man. I want to live my life. I don't want to die with a bunch of money.
Well, there's I think that those are often two different crowds. I wouldn't call myself a FIRE person, right? The financially independent, retire early, because I do like to live.
I've never heard that, and I feel like it's something I should have heard by now, but I've never heard that.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's a big thing. And then they have like Fat FIRE, which is basically do it big, right? You want to live a good life, so you want a bigger, it's not just a shoestring thing. But I think that those are often different crowds, and they kind of have to be, because if you are entrepreneurial and you know that you're going to take risks, that is the opposite direction of penny pinching and living as cheaply as you can to maximize your investments over a long duration of time, right? Because if people ask me what the biggest thing that happened was this year, I'd say I don't have to eat ramen noodles as much anymore. I still do. I still eat them, but it's like the mac and cheese thing, right? Like Spiral Mac. Spiral Mac is great. It tastes awesome. It has a different taste when you have to eat it, not when you want to eat it. So when you're forced to eat Kraft mac and cheese, it very quickly does not taste as good.
We've been on that kick. Lauren's she's got a bunch of medical debt that she's paying for, and it's like financially constricted us. But then Evergrow kind of took off earlier this year, and then it's been helpful because she's been able to take care of that, and then I've been able to like literally take care of everything. But it hasn't allowed us to live large. I guess if you count all the times we've been traveling, but which is something we can talk about too. So like aside from Evergrow and the podcast, like Evergrow is ever growing. So like we talked about this in our Columbia episode in like the 30s. I can't remember which one it was, but we closed last year at 233,000 in revenue, and I think it was 120K in profit. Is that right? Does it sound right?
Sounds about right.
All right. We'll pretend it's right. And then we went to now like we're projected at over 500,000 conservatively if we close this year out how we're doing right now and take on no additional clients, which we've also stopped acquiring clients until September. So our doors are closed, and if we kept them closed until the end of the year, we're still projected at over double of what we got last year. So huge growth in Evergrow, huge growth in the podcast, and then also some huge growth in our personal lives as well. If you listen to the podcast, you already know what a lot of this growth is. But you know, this is a good episode to kind of recap to show you like it's been a year, but let's remind you of how much can change in 1 year. I'll start it off. I went to Mexico last October and got engaged. So that was like the first like real, actually, no, it wasn't. Last year in July, I bought a house, my first house in Minnesota. Well, first house ever, but also in Minnesota. And, I was able to buy that with only my name on the loan. So Lauren didn't even co-sign for it, as a second, loan person, or a second signee. So all on mine. And we did that on purpose because one, it forced us to live, within our means, where if one of us lost one or both of our jobs, like for me, if I lost both my jobs, if Evergrow tanked for whatever reason, and then I lost my day job, Lauren could afford this house on her own and we could eat ramen noodles every day. Well, she can't because of a life update I'll talk about this year. She got diagnosed with celiac disease in January, and she can no longer have gluten, which means she can no longer have poor ramen noodle food. She can have rice though. Rice is still on the menu.
Good. Rice slaps.
So, but we bought our house in July. We moved in, we started doing remodels. Then in October, we went to Mexico, for a wedding. And then I also proposed on the beach. Spent between like July and October designing the ring, as well. And then shortly after that in January, we went to Colombia as a team and spent just over a week there, I think, or a week exactly. And that was really awesome. That was my first time like out of the country that wasn't connected to the US. I guess by way of Central America it is, but, and that all happened within like 6 months. Like we started the podcast in May, and then July to January, that all happened. And then when Lauren came back, before we went to Colombia, she was diagnosed with celiac because when we were in Colombia, she had like that one cracker, because she wanted to try it. She wanted to try it and it just totally destroyed her. Yeah. And then what happened after Colombia? We went, not a whole lot. It's been kind of slow.
Slow
I turned 30. That was big. I turned 30 in April. Well, yeah. It wasn't slow. You're right. It wasn't slow. But it was, life events were slow, I feel like, because we were in our caves just working and getting things done. We sold that franchise, or we became a partner of the franchise.
We got our first major corporate deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you scheduled everything for Tokyo.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think a couple things to remember when we're telling people like a lot can happen in a year. A lot can happen in a year, but I'm a big believer in that. I think you can reinvent your entire life in 5 years. I think it might take a year to do it, to set down a solid like groundwork and foundation. Because Jake and I started in 2019. So we have 2019, year one, 20, 21, 22. We are currently in year 5, right? Of active management of the business. And yes, that's when things started to get very cool. At the same time, it wasn't the exact same time, but it was was it? It might have been no, it was 1 year off. I went back to school at the same time. But there's nothing more brutal on your ego than, it's already very ego crushing to leave your day job and, take the dive into the deep end of entrepreneurship and just hoping that it's going to work and betting on yourself. You don't have your network anymore. It was very important for me to at least have a partner, because if it was a solo thing, that would have been even more brutal. So that's soul crushing in its own way, because it's very testing. It's very trying. You have to prove yourself. Now go back to school, right? Where you're an idiot again. You know nothing. You're learning a language, not even an easy one, like one of the hardest ones. And now you're an idiot in two places, right? You're dumb at your business because now you're doing the things that you never knew that you needed to know. I don't know if I even said that right. Before, it's all new there. It's all new at school. And then usually when people hit 30, around 30, that's when they put their feet up a little bit. They buy the house. You bought a house, but you didn't put your feet up.
Yeah, well, I was also 29 when I bought the house, so still in my 20s.
But people they finally give themselves a little bit of a break usually, right? And you've earned it at that point. And instead, I said, no breaks. Let's just make it harder, which I guess is very Japanese in some ways too. So, but it took. That's a long time. And we're for me, in my personal life, I'm seeing the results in year 5. And I think that's I think people should expect that sort of thing. I think you can lay down the foundation and the groundwork in year 1, and then it's going to be very uneventful. And you're going to second guess yourself and be very confused and wonder why you're doing it. It's going to be very challenging. Year 2 isn't much better, honestly, usually. It's marginally better. Year 3, things, I think, really start picking up.
So I think that every single year, though, a lot changes. It's just maybe not as extravagant, but a lot changes relatively. So
it's a domino. I think
it is. So I think incrementally, every year, more and more bigger things happen. You start knocking down bigger dominoes. But even when you're in year 1 and year 2, there's still a lot of small dominoes to knock down, and every single one of those is a great accomplishment. So when we started in year 1, we not only started from ground zero, no clients. We exploded. We had 10 clients at the end of year 1, and that was big. And we were in a position to hire our first employee at the start of year 2, basically. And we did a lot. I moved to a different town. I think there's just a lot personally. It's been so long ago now, I can't even remember. We had some milestones.
That's the other fun thing too, right? Is that it does change. It gives you, people say it all the time, entrepreneurship, it gives you an avenue to make change in your life that normally just takes more time at a day job. And of course you take the risk of failing, but again, that's just something I can't, when people bring it up, I just can't relate to it. And I just tell them, look, then it's just not for you. If you're just afraid of that, if you're still in that mindset of, but what if it doesn't work, or what if I fail? And I'm like, okay, what's so great about your life right now that's, that you're so worried about losing? I just can't. I can't relate.
I'll say this. So this is the magnitude of things that's different. So in year 4, which is where we're at, we are.
Wait, are we in year 4? Or are we in year 5?
2019, 2020,
that's
2021, 2022. Oh, we're in year 5. You're right. We've completed 4 years.
Yeah.
So okay. So year 5. Where we're at is over $500,000 in revenue. We're looking at hiring our third and possibly our fourth employee. We are looking at moving a portion of the business to Japan. We're both going to Japan. We're both using business expenses to pay for flights. Everywhere we have a big franchise partnership. We have, we're going to speak at a national conferences in our landscaping industry. But those are big successes for us. Those are bigger, relatively sized dominoes for us at this current point in time. But in year one, some of the dominoes that we had were, I just, recalling this, we got published in Turf Magazine. We got published twice in Turf Magazine. We got published in Green Industry Pros Magazine. We got published in Lawn and Landscape Magazine. We appeared on industry podcasts. Like, those were really big dominoes for year one. Uh-huh. And it's only once we got to year 2, 3, and 4 that the dominoes progressively got bigger and bigger, and getting published in a magazine is nothing for us. We have the contacts. We can just reach out to say, hey, we want to push this, and they will. And I'm sure in year 10, our year 5 accomplishments that we're doing right now will seem so tiny. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it just goes in every year. Like, every year you have to look at the accomplishments that you made, and a lot can change. But then when you reflect on that, in year 5, it looks like we did nothing in year 1. I look at the revenue sheet. I'm like, we made $16,000 in year 1. And I'm like, that's nothing. Mm-hmm. So, no, that's all I had. I didn't have a lot there. We did a pretty good reflection on how about you? Wait, we didn't even talk about what you did in this last year. What are some of the changes you made in your life in this last year?
What does that mean? Well, I don't get it.
What'd you do in your personal life? I can think of a couple things that you did that were changing, that were new for you.
I think it's just that, to me, the way I see it, this was the domino year, because I see people saying it to me now. They're like, wow, that's crazy. You went to Japan and Colombia in 1 year, right? Like, and because the business is an avenue for our personal lives too. It's very hard to separate business from personal when the business is personal. That's why it's just a joke when people are like, it's not business, or it's not personal, it's just business. It's like, okay, well, business is personal. So, so it is personal.
Want to be here without the business?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's been a major domino thing. And then it's just been the last 3 years for me have been a constant grind, and this year is finally the break. And it's not even necessarily a break, because I'm not slowing down. It's finally up to breathe and realize, oh, you've done things, and you're actually seeing results for them now.
Something that I forgot to mention too is we got our onboarding process documented this last year. Mm-hmm. And that was something we didn't have before. And that was a huge game changer for us. And, but I'll also help you on your own personal life goals. I think you were really bad at remembering and recalling smaller goals.
Oh, I'm past negative. I think you know that. If people ask me too, they're like, anything that already happened is bad. That's how I see things. I look back at the past in a negative light, and I always look positive to the future. So
you got engaged also.
Sure, we can call it that.
Yeah, it doesn't like labels, but that's what it is. You paid for an ice ring, and you gave it to her, and it's on a ring finger, and that usually means it's a diamond. So there you go. Then what else did you do? You had you're in your 3rd or 4th year of Japanese now.
Just wrapped up 3rd year and going into 4th year now too. And I told them too, all my classmates, I said, guys, I'm going to Japan. If it's really cool there and I get set up in some way, like business support stuff, I can rant about that if people actually care to know about the logistics of business in Japan, because I've learned quite a bit. But I told them, like, I'm not coming back. Sorry. I'll drop out. It was after talking to you.
You asked me about this. And you're like, and I think Lauren might have been there too. She's like, but yeah, you were saying, should I, or I was asking her opinion too, but you're like, should I, what if I, get a chance to come back here or stay here or do logistical stuff with Japan? Like, is it worth it to come back and do my class? I'm like, I guess only if you want the accreditation. But I mean, if your goal is to actually do business in Japan and you have the ability to learn it for free or get paid to learn it in Japan, like,
right.
It's, it's a no brainer.
Yeah. I bought my first Japanese book that's not a children's book and not a learning book. And it's called, I don't even know how to translate it. It's like the manual for foreigners to establish their company in Japan. It's like a very strange.
And it's written in Japanese.
Yeah, it's all in Japanese. The kanji, it's terrible. I can't actually read a lot of it yet.
So was it written by someone who was English and then translated it? Is that why it's terrible?
I think they're Japanese and they just kind of specialized in it. Like it's the kind of thing that they do, like as a specialization.
Why is the kanji terrible?
It's just I'm not smart enough yet.
Oh, so you're terrible.
Right, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you made it seem like it was the book's fault. And I was like,
no. So I've been going through a book and there are, I think 2,400 kanji that most Japanese know by the time they graduate high school. And I'm not yet I'm between 800 and 900 so far. So I'm not yet even halfway. Right now, I've just been trying to do 4 a day through the summer. I just can't do it during school. It's too brutal and too much. So at this rate, if I was able to do that outside of school, I'd have it down in under 2 years. But yeah, it's just hard. It's just really hard.
I need to keep practicing Spanish. My semester ended, but I still have access to all my learning materials, and I don't do the flashcards like I should. And I have been speaking quite a bit of Spanish to Lisette and some other people that I can when I can. And when I was in Tampa last weekend for my sister's graduation, I would just like randomly say shit in Spanish. And like we were swimming in the pool, and as I said, like, I'm gonna go swim in the pool, and then immediately after that, I said, voy a nadar en la piscina, which is I'm going to go swimming in the pool. Like, I probably said something wrong in the beginning, but like. That's kind of like at the stage that I'm in. Like if I think about it long enough, I can say the thing that I'm going to say. But usually what I do is I'll say the thing that I'm going to say in Spanish, and then I'll open Google Translate it. And then I'll like I'll go to Spanish to English and I'll type it in. I'm like, did that translate appropriately? And then I'll do it reverse of the English to Spanish and then see if it's still translated properly. And like 90% of the time I'm right. But I still do it like every time because I'm just not sure of myself.
It's nice that you can do it though with Google Translate, that it works that well, that they're close enough. You can just
with Spanish, it's pretty well. The hard part too is like there's a lot of like Spanish phrases that make sense in Spanish, but then don't translate well in English, and so like in Spanish, you would say like, I hope you find yourself doing well. But in English, when you say that in Spanish, in English, it just translates, I hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
But that find verb is in there. It's just kind of like, it makes sense in English, but like in English, we don't say that. We just leave it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's necessary in Spanish or else it sounds weird. And I don't know. Sometimes I don't understand, but no, I think we're at a good time. I don't want to bore people with just kind of non-value adding stuff for the next, 30 minutes.
As this whole episode, potentially. It was just kind of us humble bragging on how cool things have gotten.
Yeah.
I think final points that I think are just worth bringing up are like, we've gotten the podcast to a cool point. We want to keep growing it in a helpful and useful way. Please communicate that sort of stuff to us so that we can be helpful and useful, and in a way that's not growing into every other podcast that's out there. That's the number one thing we're trying to avoid. We don't listen to them, and neither do you, because they suck and they're boring. And how do we tread this fine line of not going overly professional so that it's just super lame, and not going full bro guru garbage?
There was someone told me that they found our podcast somehow. I don't know exactly how, and he doesn't either, but he said he avoided listening to it for a while and finally broke down and listened to it, and now he's binged it ever since. And the reason why he avoided listening to it is because of the name, which is what I kind of fought you about when we first started this. And he goes, I just thought it was going to be one of those bro marketing podcasts that I absolutely hate. I was like, I fucking knew it.
That's why I thought it was funny though. I don't know. There was a meme a while back that it makes me think of, and it just reminds me of my life now. And it's like, you start saying bro ironically at first because you think it's funny, and then you just keep saying it. And then you get to a point where you're not saying it ironically anymore, and it's just a part of you and who you are in your life. And we are very not broy, so it is funny because in a lot of true broy business environments, I just get really weird and uncomfortable. And like, I can't relate to you guys. I don't know what's happening here.
I've heard this bro marketing podcast before, and they're cringy to listen to, but they're not cringy in a good way that I want to listen to it. It's just like, I don't know. It's weird, but I was, he finally did break down, listen to it, and I don't know, he's happy with it. But I was like, well, we're 53 weeks into it. It's not changing. So thanks, Cody.
Yep. You're welcome, guys. Hope
I also said you can't put Ever Bros on a t-shirt. It just looks weird. So here we are. All right. Guys, I think that's all we had for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, say something. If you didn't, that's fine too, I guess. But we just really wanted to have this because we didn't want 52 weeks to go by and then us just not say anything about it, or just kind of reserve it for a cold open. I think it was important to mark the milestone and then move on. So we'll return next week with something that's a bit more valuable that we have in the pipeline. So, but yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you. See you.